Welcome to Biohacking for the Executive Athlete, where high performance meets deep recovery and ambition is powered by coherence. I'm your host, Nicole Ward, Senior Vice President of Sales at Aon, board-certified health and nutrition coach, wellness geek, biohacker, and founder of the Sales Athlete platform. Each week, I get to sit down with industry leaders, elite performers, and trailblazing biohackers to uncover the science, strategies, and daily practices that fuel sustained success at the top. It's not just about pushing harder, it's about recovering smarter, thinking sharper, and performing better. Our energy is our edge, and this is your playbook for high performance from the inside out. In our locker room today, I'm really excited to welcome Joe Chura. Joe Chura is the founder and CEO of Go Brewing, and he is a performance-driven entrepreneur and tech innovator turned non-alcoholic craft beer trailblazer. After building and successfully exiting Dealer Inspire to Cars.com for nearly $200 million, Joe pivoted following a transformative personal health journey during the pandemic. After quitting alcohol with his wife and experiencing immediate benefits like 40-plus pound weight loss and renewed clarity, he identified a huge gap: flavorful, high-quality, non-alcoholic beer without compromise that could support social connection. In 2021, he founded Go Brewing in his garage. By 2023, he had launched the first dedicated NA taproom and a lineup of medal-winning beers. And today, Go Brewing distributes across 20-plus states, including via Costco and Amazon, with over 60,000 online orders, and has received major accolades at the Best of Craft Beer Awards. Chura leads with a do-it-yourself, then scale-it ethos, and is actively innovating in both production and brand strategy. He's co-leading Craftsmith, a manufacturing JV, and Easy Man, a microdosed THC beverage company. Through community events, think wellness, classes, live music, and mission-driven programming, Go Brewing is really helping to reshape the future of mindful social drinking. Joe, such an interesting and compelling story. Thank you so much for taking some time to be here today.
Well, thanks for having me and gathering all that information.
It's amazing what the internet can provide.
Right?
I love it. Well, thank you so much. I would love it if we could maybe go into your kind of origin or backstory a little bit. You've gone from building and selling a massive tech company to brewing, again, non-alcoholic beer in your garage. That's a big pivot. Can you tell us, give us the backstory there? How did it all come about?
Well, my life is mainly about pivots, I should say. When I was in my 20s, I actually worked at the Ford Chicago assembly plant building the 1998 Ford Taurus. So I just outed myself out as far as my age. And during that time period, I knew I needed a way to get out of that plant. It was an amazing job, but I couldn't see myself there for 30 years. So I decided to enroll in school. And as I was building the 1998 Ford Taurus and the cars were rolling down the assembly line at 72 cars per hour, I was putting on a seatbelt, a B-pillar, a scuff plate, all these things that go on the trim of the inside of cars. And I found myself with about 15 seconds to spare in between building these cars because they would slowly roll down so I could work my way up the line enough to come back to read 15 seconds at a time. And that's how I learned this law of incrementality and the power of doing something over and over again. And coming from a high school GPA of 3 or below, I don't even recall what it was. I found myself really doing well in school, and I was surprised. But it was like before the advent of the internet that it was just 15 seconds was great for my attention span, but allowed me to learn and grasp information in a way I hadn't done before because I was never forced in that situation. And I ended up doing that for 5 years, and I graduated college. Worked myself out of the plant, and I always had a love for digital marketing, and this was the early 2000s, so I was able to get a job as a salary employee in the Ford marketing and sales division, and it was very lucky. It was around the time when the internet was just starting to take off. So I had to convince these car dealers that I called on as a Ford rep that the internet wasn't a fad. I mean, take yourself back if you even could to that moment where here's this like completely new concept, and these car dealers are like, fax machines were really innovative to them, and phone calls is what they lived by. So all of a sudden there's this electronic communication, and I had to like help them figure it out. So there was just a really opportune time to fall in love with digital marketing and understanding the internet and technology. And fast forward a decade or so later, a little less than a decade, I ended up building a marketing company called Launch Digital Marketing to serve those car dealers. So I left Ford and I was like, hey, I could help car dealers show up in search engine results. So created an agency that did that. And then very soon after that, I realized that all of this traffic I was generating for these dealers was going to kind of shitty websites. And there was no way for these dealers to track analytics or performance marketing and really their ROI. And coming from being kind of in that space, I knew how important that was to them because they spent a lot of money. So decided to build a website platform and created a new entity called Dealer Inspire. So I had these two entities and ended up growing that to being the top 37 fastest growing company in America by 2017. And then Launch was up there as well and ended up selling both companies. I had about 400 so employees in 2018 at cars.com.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And then from that sprung Go Brewing.
Yeah.
Right?
So then that doesn't even touch on the
Right.
that doesn't even touch on the pivot. So then staying on as the CEO of those companies, and we in life, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this. You have these let's call them like pillars of things, and one might be like your family, and one might be yourself, and one might be health and wellness, one might be business. And for me, I never had anything like even. It was really geared toward like business. I was so focused on entrepreneurship and growing businesses and that I let my health go. Essentially, my health and wellness pillar was nothing. I looked in the mirror and I was fat and overweight and just didn't feel great. And then I started to just take note of my habits, which were pretty obvious. I was drinking too much. And when you drink a lot, you tend to eat poorly. The midnight burrito wasn't uncommon for me to go get one of those, and then sometimes two. And then, I found myself way overweight. I was a kid that couldn't even gain weight. And then now I'm in my 30s, and I couldn't lose weight for anything. So my wife and I said enough's enough. She was feeling similar things. She wasn't as out of shape as I was. And during the height of COVID, which was an excuse to just do more of that, we decided to do a challenge where we abstained from alcohol for 75 days, doing something called 75 Hard. And I felt incredible. And I was like, wow, this is just such an amazing feeling. And I realized that I had been under the cloud of alcohol my entire life to some extent since I was 15. There hadn't been really a week that went by that I wasn't drinking. And if your body's so used to that, you don't know what it's like to not be under that cloud of alcohol. And when I realized it made me realize how I achieved what I did under this cloud. And now that cloud was gone, and it felt again incredible. But that didn't change these massive cravings I had. I had cravings for a beer. I had cravings for alcohol because I'd grown accustomed in decades of my life of drinking on a Friday night or drinking after work. And I needed to fight that urge during this challenge because I really committed to it. The only thing that helped me is non-alcoholic beer. And this was, again, 2020. So in looking at the landscape, a few things happened serendipitously in terms of having this idea for a non-alcoholic beverage. First, there was a couple that were starting to emerge, and I was really impressed with them. And I just saw the opportunity in the category to expand on what was starting to become a new thing. And then I asked myself an important question. If I wake up in 5 years from now, are people going to be drinking more or less? And the answer to me was less, because you had Huberman now on podcasts, you had Rich Roll, you have all these people that are talking about the negative side effects of alcohol, and those people have an audience. And it was, before that, I mean, go back 20 years, like we didn't have that kind of news and that scientific data. I mean, surely we knew that drinking to excess was not good, but 2-3 drinks a day was very, very common. I mean, it's kind of weird if you didn't do that. And now all of a sudden there's this new information to say like, you really shouldn't drink anything. And by the way, I'm sure we're going to get into it, but I'm not alcohol free, and I believe in moderation. So I'm speaking from a place of not sobriety, and I respect a lot of people that are sober. I'm speaking from a place of like, I needed to control myself, and I was realizing I wasn't. So all those things combined, a few other magical things happened in the universe to lead me down a path to have an idea to create a non-alcoholic brewery. And in thinking about that, I knew product had to be number one. I knew that, I could be the best marketer in the world. But if the product wasn't good, someone would try it once and say, "Hey, Joe, I tried it. Thank you. It was good." And then they'd walk away and never try it again, So created a brewery in my garage in the very end of 2021, like the very, very end. And then 22 really kind of went all at it in my garage, hired a few people, and then got to a place where we felt confident in our product, and then ended up building a brewery, which I thought there was others out there, but it turned out it was like one of the only non-alcoholic tap rooms in the United States. I thought it was just like Illinois. I would tell people on the news that all the time, and then come to find out there wasn't any other one really.
Wow.
So that's the summary, but there's a lot more there, of course.
No, absolutely. There's so much there that I want to pull on. The first question I would ask, and this will sound self-serving and I don't mean it to, but my book is called Biohacking for the Sales Athlete, Optimizing Our Health to Transform Our Results. And that will hopefully be coming out in 2026. But the reason why I mention that is because I truly believe through my own experience and my own health journey that when we optimize our health, it does transform our results. And what you said there was that you had spent, since you were 15, the majority of your life in sort of a bit of a fog, right? Or at least alcohol involved, right? And so I wonder if you would share how being out from underneath that fog a little bit and the clarity of more frequent sobriety, if you will, what did that give you? Did it change you as a leader? Did you notice, how has it impacted you overall in terms of your life as a leader, as a builder of a company and an entrepreneur?
If you've had a point in your life when you were just like really foggy and then came out of it, or you were really sick and you got healthy, it's kind of what it felt like. It was such a black and white color moment. That's the way I could describe it. Like I was living in a black and white world, and then all of a sudden it just went to color. It didn't happen immediately, but it was like after the first month or so, it really started to show up. And that is like less anxiety, less issues with thinking clearly. I would forget things often, and I didn't know why. I wasn't that old by any means. So I started to just have a much more awareness of a lot of things in my life. And then from a physical standpoint, my skin started to get clearer. I had these perpetual bags under my eyes that I just thought were part of me, and those started to go away. I was starting to lose weight. And when you take on habits like that, especially during a challenge, you're going to take on better eating habits. So it wasn't just alcohol. But the thing that I see a lot is folks tend to buy supplements over trying to reduce something that's harming them. You know what I mean? And for me, it was like getting to a base layer of like, okay, I'm not going to do any of that stuff until like I'm clean and I'm sober and I can prove to myself that I can control this. So if I just sum it up, like it would just be extreme clarity in a way where it wasn't describable before.
Amazing. It's fantastic. And, you're in a category with Go Brewing, where a lot of people still associate beer with alcohol, right? And I wonder if you've found that challenging at all, or if there have been some breakthroughs around that in the idea of selling, non-alcoholic craft beer. Can you speak to that at all? Has it been confusing at all, or how has that worked from
Yeah,
a marketing perspective?
yeah, it's a good question. Certainly, there can be confusion, but I think it's much more. It's more popular now than it ever was. So I give credit to like Athletic Brewing and some of these other pioneers that really started to create this category outside of what was like O'Doul's. And O'Doul's, you didn't really know what it was. Like you didn't know if it was beer. Like yeah, it tasted like a beer, but I mean there wasn't like a lot of information about it. They weren't selling it online. There wasn't anything you could go to a website and buy it. There wasn't anything like that. You just maybe found it at a place, in the back of a refrigerator, and it was dusty typically. And that was my experience when I was trying to do these challenges. Like back then, is a lot of places just wouldn't have anything except O'Doul's if they had anything at all. So I think that stigma around, hey, this still has some alcohol in it, it's like pretty gone, or it's pretty much gone by the wayside. But I will say that every day there's still, or every other day on like a Facebook ad comment, there's someone's trying to argue that there's alcohol in it. Why do you call it non-alcoholic beer? And things like that. But the reality is that I found is that the alcohol in our beer is less than what's in orange juice or everyday breads. So when you explain that to someone, like really, you can't get away without you can't get away from alcohol. It's everywhere. It's just in such minute trace amounts that it doesn't have any impact on you. So there definitely was an educational point to that. Now, the one thing I did learn is that alcohol has 7 calories per gram in it. So like when we think of macros, right, you think of calories, fat, and protein. And that's just how I thought everything was. And I thought if you add those up, like it should add, based on, 4 calories per gram of protein, 4 calories per gram of carbs, and 7 calories per gram of fat. And I thought you add that all up and that's the calories in a product. That's actually not the case. Like alcohol is this separate thing that is never disclosed. So folks that will ask a question of like, how many carbs are in your beer? And I wrote a blog post on this too. It's kind of the wrong question, because it's like you look at Michelob Ultra and your perception is, hey, that's going to be healthier for me because there's less carbs in it. Well, what you're not seeing is the calories you're getting are from beer, and they're actually way worse for you. They're completely wasted calories from alcohol. And that is why you see things like hazy IPAs with, or beers with 400 to 500 calories in them. It's not the carbs in them; it's the alcohol content. So it's pretty amazing. So once you start to dig in there and explain to people, hey, here's something that tastes really just like the real thing, but it's 1/3, sometimes 1/4 of the calories, and you're gonna get that placebo effect that you're drinking alcohol. Like they really are have become fans of it, and that's why I believe it's one of the it is the fastest growing category in beverage, because it's one of those non-alcoholic products that really can taste like the real thing.
Mm. And it feels like this is part, or like Go Brewing is part of a bigger movement more than just a product. And I think you mentioned that, that there's sort of an experience that you're trying to create around this as well. Was that your intention from day one? Tell me maybe a little bit about that.
I didn't know anything about beer except how to drink it. And I didn't know anything about how to get a product into retail. My last business was software and marketing. I mean, that's what I knew. But when I realized that you could sell beer online, I knew that was a way to get the product we were going to create to market and to collect data and ask customers questions and iterate on the product over time. That if and when we had the chance to go to retail, I would have a treasure trove of data that I didn't believe existed in the same way. Now, certainly at that point, there was some non-alcoholic breweries that were selling online, but in the history of beer and beverage, there wasn't a lot of consumer data being collected from a first party. So that was kind of my secret sauce of like why I felt confident going into space, because I knew how to sell online. I knew, like, I love doing that. I love like building websites, and if that was my first chance to start to bring the product to life, and I knew I could just ask customers questions. So building a community was always important. The second part to that is because we didn't really have any distribution coming out of the gate. I didn't hire a team that had been experienced, like many people do in retail, right away. I mean, now I have an amazing team that has a ton of experience, but I really focused on the tap room because I knew people were going to drive past here. Naperville, Illinois is where it's at. It's the third or fourth largest city in Illinois. It's a fairly affluent community. It's a great community. And I knew that I could get an audience to this brewery and then I could at least make content around it and then create events, health and wellness events. In fact, the first weekend we opened, I had a cold plunge event, which was, I mean, this was 2023.
That's great.
This was, yeah, the very end of 2022. And then I had the Iron Cowboy out who has a Amazon movie on how he ran 100 marathons in 100 days. The guy's crazy. So he came out here to speak. And I just really built it from day one around this health and wellness, but more of like moderation as well. Although I did very quickly find out that we do have a lot of sober customers. About 20% of our audience are sober. And that was something that was fairly unexpected as well. But everyone is like marching toward this drum of, I just want to be a little bit healthier. Like that's what I feel. And it's not this like, you got to be perfect thing and wake up at 5 a.m. and do cold plunges and read a book and do a sauna and do 2 hours worth of stuff. I just want to make smaller, better choices that are going to lead to better outcomes for me. And that's the community that I really feel is around us.
I think it's so cool. It's like the first biohacking beer, right? I love it. I love it. So, along the way, obviously you've built some grit and some resilience, through all of the journey that you've shared. Have there been moments that really tested you, or setbacks along the way that, I love this quote from my grandmother and I use it frequently, but it's poop makes great fertilizer. And so I wonder if you might share a little of your poop, Joe.
There hasn't been a week that goes by where something doesn't happen to really make me question everything. It's a very, very competitive space, and we took the path of creating our own product, which was the path less traveled in the space. And that is something I didn't realize. When I have an idea for something, I just go at it and I try to not look for excuses. Had I looked for excuses, I would have found a lot of why this space is so hard. And what many of our competitors do is they contract manufacture, so they don't even make their own product. In fact, most of the craft NA beer out there on the shelf is not made by the brand. It's made by someone else. And I didn't even know that was an option. And I could have done research and figured that out. Obviously, I understood co-manufacturing, but I didn't really think about the beer world in that way. And it turns out it very much lives in that way, especially national brands. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But the path that we chose is to make our own product because we wanted control. We wanted to make sure we're innovating very quickly. We were listening to feedback. And beer is unlike other beverages where there's a little finesse to it. Some of these breweries that have been around for ages, like Budweiser and Miller, they're so good because they make this consistent product. And to do that with this living thing that has yeast and grain in it, it's very, very difficult. So we took the stance of let's get as much feedback from our audience as possible and then take that feedback and just iterate and make our product better. And that was our big focus.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I wonder, do you see this as part of, a major culture shift? Because I know when we're all at the store, the Sprouts, the Whole Foods, the whatever, we're seeing a lot of these non-alcoholic spirits and combination drinks sort of pop up. Do you see this as a huge shift for non-alcohol and wellness and all the things?
Yeah, it is absolutely a huge shift, and it's credit to a lot of the knowledge dropped on the podcast I'd mentioned and just people becoming to terms with with alcohol. So you have this generation that I would say I'm in, that's like kind of our core market, who can't drink the way they used to. Like, we grew up in a environment where craft beers were like the thing, and we could have them when we were in our late 20s and early 30s. And now, because of the calories in them and the hangovers and people having families and just wanting to just be better in terms of their health, you just can't do that anymore. So folks are doing what's called zebra striping, which is a newer term this year that I heard, where it's just like you mix, or you have an alcoholic beer and then you have a non-alcoholic beer. So you have folks like that, and we see them in our tap room all the time. And then you have other people that are just like, they just drink NA during the week because they want beer, but they know they shouldn't have alcohol. On the weekends, they go crazy. And then we have a sober audience that just completely abstains from alcohol, and they just drink NA beer. And of course, there's a hybrid, and that's also what I realized is everyone's on a spectrum. Like, alcohol is like DNA in the sense of like everyone's unique, their approach to it. But that is, it's more than just kind of this shift. It is like, it is a movement. It is like a revolution in a way. And that's why you see more and more bigger brands getting behind it. And the category itself is compounding year over year. It still represents like 3% or less of the total alcohol category. But going back a few years, that was 1.5%. So to take that amount of share from alcohol is pretty crazy. Now, the benefit, though, is like it's largely an accretive category too, meaning that if you're a retailer distributor, you're going to see or have the potential for more sales, more incrementality, and not necessarily less. You have people like me that are going to experiment with both, and that product's there. And a few years ago, it wasn't.
Yeah. And I think, it would be interesting to pivot a little bit to your own sort of personal health journey and some insights, if you're willing to share with us. Like when you think about now your wellness routine, how you dial in when you've got a big pitch to give to investors, when you're going to walk on a stage or head into a big meeting, what are some of the personal things that you've adopted now, some part of your personal curriculum or protocol, if you will, to sort of, whether it's supplementation, diet, exercise? Would you mind sharing some of those routines with us?
Yeah, sure. So one, I would make sure I get good sleep a night or 2 nights before, depending on how important it is. In order to get a good night's sleep, you cannot drink alcohol. Like, those two things don't work. If you have to, for whatever reason, it has to be way earlier in the day. So that kind of goes without saying. So that's like the baseline. Like, don't drink alcohol, and make sure you get a good night's sleep, a little more than you would normally get. And then from there, my daily routine is waking up at 5:20 a.m., 5:25. I go downstairs, I have a buddy come over, and we work out. And we typically right now are doing strength training, but we had been training for high rocks, so we would alternate with running and strength training in my basement. And now we're really getting to flexibility, and we're spending 20 minutes in the morning just stretching, and there's typically a little meditation in there. And that has been like a game changer, because I am sure I'm not alone as a dude that I'm just not flexible the way. I don't think I ever was like super flexible, but I am like very stiff all the time. And yeah, I can be strong and I can lift a bunch of weights, but it's hard for me to like be as mobile as I was and as flexible as I can be. So we're spending time stretching, and that just feels great. It just is different. I think you put your mind in a different place. So we follow this app called Pliability, and there's a daily routine there, and I just follow that daily routine, and then we'll do like today we did just a strength workout, and the whole thing was about 1 hour and 10 minutes, including the stretching. And then after that, I will have a protein shake. I'll put a little creatine in it, and then coffee, and that's kind of like my morning. And then today I made a turkey burger for breakfast. I was just extra hungry without the bun. That's fairly atypical. I don't really eat that much in the morning, but when my body feels like it craves protein, then I'll have more protein. So I just kind of let my body tell me like what it wants, and many days it doesn't. So it's a little bit easier, and that's how I get the day started. And then I have all the other like toys, red light and sauna and all that stuff. And I think those are all like really nice to haves and like cool. But if you're not covering your bases, like yeah, that's great. You can have all that. But if you're not getting good sleep and you're not abstaining
Moving
from
your body.
alcohol right before you go to bed, then like
Yeah,
you could do red light all you want. It's not going to help you.
totally. I agree. You got to have the baseline covered. Any
Mhm.
supplements that you find are really intrinsic to your day or things that you turn to in given circumstances?
Yeah. I actually just recently did a methylation test, not the Gary Brecka thing. Not there's
Yeah.
anything wrong with Gary Brecka, but not that. But like just really like did a deeper dive in my DNA, and I did that. I should say why I did that. Anytime I would take B vitamins, because I go to a functional medicine doctor and she gives me a line of supplements, and anytime I would take these B vitamins, I was just getting moody and I just wasn't feeling good. And then I started to do a little research on it, and then it turns out like if you have certain genes that it can really affect your mood if you have the wrong sorts of vitamins, right? And the way we
Yeah.
approach health is like kind of a one size fits all. You go to Costco, you get a big multivitamin thing, and you get the same B vitamins and like energy drinks. They're filled with certain B12s like
Yeah.
cyanocobalamin, and that could be absolutely fine for many people. But if it affects you negatively, like that energy drink can now swing your mood into a negative state. And I started to realize all this stuff. So I was like, I'm just going to get tested to see. And sure enough, like I should not be taking a lot of those things. I should not be having energy drinks, not because of the B12, it's because the kind of B12 that's in it, the cyanocobalamin. And so then I'm starting to supplement with instead of the standard B vitamins like folic acid and other things like that, and just feeling a little bit better. It's still new. It's like probably a couple weeks of this being consistent, and then outside of that, I do take a prescription called Vyvanse, and I try not to take it as much, but during the work week, I feel like it does help me stay focused, and it's kind of like an Adderall based thing. And I know that's not great for you by any means, but for me, it just works, it like clicks, and it just helps me. So that would be the prescription side of things, and then making sure I try to make sure I get all my protein, but it's hard. I mean, like I'm 200 pounds to get 200 pounds every day. It's not happening. It's just not. But the days I can, I feel good about it. So those things, and then I just try to be active. I like signing up for races is really important to me. Having a goal at this age to strive for something, whether that's a marathon on the calendar or High Rocks is something I'm into. That's a fitness race. I think that's really important because now your workouts turn into training for something. So it's getting in that mindset as well, and especially when you could do it with a partner, which High Rocks you can, and in terms of the marathons, I'm a guy for a double amputee, so I get to do that with him too. So it's a really good like shared experience, both things. So I found that is really fueling to me versus training for something that's just like a triathlon that I'm going to be by myself for 6 hours.
Right. It's like a partner and a partner in health crime. I love it. Um, and if you had some advice, a lot of folks listening to this are executives or sales executives, et cetera, people that are aspiring on many levels, hopefully young entrepreneurs as well. Do you have any advice that you might give to them about balancing well-being and health with ambition, with drive, right? Because you clearly have not gotten where you are, and where you have without that. But yet, there's a cost, right? There's a push and a pull with that, right? How do you balance it, and what advice would you have to give to others who are trying to do the same?
Balance is such a tricky word for me because it's just not the reality of life. It is, at least my life. How I look at it is like there are times when I'm really dialed in. There's times when I'm not, and usually if I'm low on something, I'm high on something else in terms of like being dialed in. So that might mean I'm really dialed in business and I'm slacking here. Maybe because I'm really dialed in business, I'm also not being as present as I can with my kids, you know? I think like starting to realize that and putting some sort of limit on yourself. Like, and I'll just give you an example. Like yesterday, I came home, my son's on his iPad. It would be really easy for me to like go and do work, and I didn't have anything I had to do. Like I always have an infinite amount of things I can do, but I didn't have anything I had to do at that point. And it's like hot and muggy here, and I didn't really want to go outside too much. And I just was like, hey, buddy, let's go outside and let's clean the cold plunge together because we haven't gotten ready for the summer yet, you know, and like we just went outside and we did that. So it's like being really cognizant of like that those little moments that seem like nothing. I could have just like got on my laptop, worked, he would have stayed and he was watching YouTube, he would have did that, everything would have been fine. So I think just taking a minute and looking at that is really important. The other thing is like there are times in life where you're not going to feel motivated, and that's okay. Like it's not just know that and be like, oh man, I need something to get motivated again. And that's where I go back to like, okay, let me get something on the calendar. Let me get a race because I'm not going to show up for that half-ass. Like I might not put in all my effort, but I'm not going to not train at all. You know, so now you have something to strive for. So I think that's really important advice for people to go after that. And then I would say to just find something that can light a little bit of a fire under you. I'm not a huge believer in like you're just gonna like watch something, you're gonna be inspired, and all of a sudden you're just gonna like do X. But what I what I have seen and what's worked for me is like I'll see something that inspires me to light a fire to then give me enough energy to take those first steps. And you know, my buddy, we brought up the Iron Cowboy, but the moment he changed his life around was when he, unknowingly to me, watched this documentary of the Iron Cowboy. He was like an alcoholic and he was out of shape. And this guy was a former reality TV star, and he just was like heading down the wrong path. And his wife's like, just watch this. And the guy never ran anything in his life. Like it was so different from the lifestyle that he was accustomed to. He was a musician and a hairstylist and all this stuff. And all of a sudden he's like, why am I watching this movie about a triathlon guy? But that moment he was like, screw it, I'm going to do the Ironman. Like, you know, and that could have faded quickly, but because he created that challenge for himself, he started training, and now he's done, you know, 10 ultra marathons and like just a crazy fitness guy. So he took all this negativity and put it into something positive because he was inspired. So like, don't be afraid and don't listen to folks that are like, oh, inspiration doesn't work. It doesn't for the long term, but it can give you enough of a spark to motivate you to take action, to sign up for a race or to do that thing. So find out what that is, whatever it is for you.
I think that's great guidance. I think it's, you know, it's understanding how we as individuals are motivated. But like you say, sometimes it's just saying yes to something and going for it, even if you don't know how it's all going to play out or what that outcome might be. It's just saying yes and showing up. And I think what you said about having a goal, something to work towards, is sometimes a great motivator. I think some of us also just like to have something to push up against, you know, a challenge, you know, whatever that might be. So I think all of that is really good guidance. And when you think
That's
about, oh, sorry, please go ahead.
I was going to say that's where our name came from, Go. It's not just about like go fitness, it's go everything. Like stop overthinking things. It's like our just do it. It's agency that you have control of your life and just take those first steps, just go. Or like in many cases the alternative is way worse than not trying, right? Like do you want to be that person on your deathbed thinking of all the regret of not trying? And a lot of this is easier said than done, and there's risks. And the one thing I want to point out, if there's a takeaway from this, it's like find your acceptable level of risk of anything that you want to do in your life. And if you want to start a business, like don't think of all the reasons you can't. Think about what's the biggest risk I can take that's not going to like collapse my family. And that can vary quite a bit. Like for me, it's different than someone else. If you're someone that's barely making ends meet, that I'm not advocating go quit your job, but like, what's the biggest risk you can take? You can take $500 and you can invest that into something and then see where it goes. And that could be like a web server, that could be a Adobe program, it could be whatever. But like, that could be your acceptable level of risk. And I think many times we just think about all the reasons we can't do something versus all the reasons why we can.
Absolutely. And, one of someone that I follow that's been sort of a personal mentor to me, his name is Mark Manson. He's a great writer. And he has a quote that I'm probably going to brutalize right now, but the gist of it is, when we all say, oh, I want to be a concert violinist, or I'd love to do this or that thing, it's what are you willing to hurt for? What are you willing to endure discomfort for? To get to the other side, which is the reward and the real opportunity. And I think we all have to ask ourselves that, right? Because anything that we want, at some point, we're going to bump up against, challenges with it. So what are you really willing to, to put in the effort for, the pain for, the time for, the energy for, the failure for, right? So yeah, I think that's,
And I would say the flip side of that though too is like, that is good advice, but it's really like, what can you do today? Yeah, like if I didn't read that 15 seconds at a time and said, I don't have any time for this, then I would never be sitting here on a podcast with you talking about anything historically meaningful with my life. Like, it just wouldn't. And many times we find like we don't have time, but we do. It's just a matter of prioritization and those smaller increments of time, whether that be in a commute or if that is like going to the store or doing some mundane task around your house, put in headphones, listen to this podcast, listen to another podcast, listen to an audiobook, and learn. Take that opportunity to learn something that you're interested in to propel you forward. And that has been the difference of what I see as people that are successful and not, is they figure out how to use the time they have and not say they don't have it.
Totally. In bite size, making it doable, right? Like you say, fitting it in, whether it's waking up the 5 minutes early, whether it is on the walk to work, in the back of the Uber, finding those times to bite size it, right? Not making it this huge mountain you have to climb, right?
Find the time and take the steps of that day. If you're training for a marathon, like, don't think about the 26 miles you're going to run. Think like, what do I have to do today in my workout? Now, some of this again is easier said than done, but the reality of it is like, that's how the Navy SEALs get through buds. They don't think about the whole thing. The ones that do that like are done. They think about what's the mile I have to run in front of me, and they have to do it again because they know it's not going to last forever. And that's how they get through it. If you listen to any history of people that got through buds, they say the same thing over and over again. And on my podcast, I interviewed a bunch of Navy SEALs, and they say the same thing. It's like, focus on the moment, and that's really what life's about. It's just focus on today, and don't worry about tomorrow. And then tomorrow, like, you worry about tomorrow.
Right. The Buddhist saying of doing what's right in front of us right now. No, I love that.
Yeah.
And pivoting a little bit to your sort of, when you think about legacy and, when you think about in this stage of life and career, and obviously you've got a lot of miles on your tires yet, don't get me wrong, but, what are you really playing for, right? When you think about the game that you're playing now, we all want to be thinking we're playing a bigger game. You've continued to play a bigger game. What are you playing for?
Oh, that's such a good question. And for me, it's a complicated answer because there's, it wasn't, I mean, first off, if I was doing this to make money, I would have made way more money not doing what I'm doing now. Like, I could just put it in a bank with the sales of my companies, and I would have earned interest, and I would have been better off, at least at this point in my life. And I could not even fathom that. Like, that wasn't even an option. My like fear was like, why am I not happy? And that's what was happening. It's like I fulfilled all these kind of things and I just wasn't happy. And what I realized is that I wasn't happy because I wasn't doing the things anymore that brought me joy or fuel. And that's something else you should audit for yourself. is that having a conversation with someone, or like knowing you see a friend, like you just get, or someone calls, like you just get certain feelings, and really starting to like understand what those are, and say, okay, it's okay if this person gives me fuel or they don't. And you have to put time into either spending with that person, or sometimes the minimum amount of time if they don't give you the fuel in your life that you want. But I think the same thing goes true for like the businesses that I'm creating. Like when I started to be really happy again is when I literally started to build a Go Brewing website, like from scratch. And I went to the bank and I got a bank account, and I opened up a project management software, and I started to create a process. And I started to get this energy that I hadn't had for many, many years. So I'd grown this company to this monster. And by that point, this was like 2021, I had 800 employees. You know, I had grown this thing even double from when I sold it, and nothing I was doing was fun anymore. And it wasn't anyone's fault. It just grew to a point where, if you think about it, like your job as the CEO is like to maintain the culture, to make sure there's cash in the bank, to make sure you're growing, you have a vision and you're strategizing and you're communicating that. Well, all those things are great, but like what I love doing is like being hands on keyboard and like doing the work and coming up with an idea and making something happen. I sold to a public company. I couldn't do any of that stuff anymore. And that wasn't, again, their fault. It was just like we were too big. We couldn't do that stuff the way we could before. And I started to become depressed and not even knowing it. And then I was like, as soon as I started building the website and email flows, like the nerdiest stuff, like people would be like, why is that fun to you? Because it was fun to me, and it gave me this energy and this light that I hadn't had for years. And it was like, that's it. That's the unlock. I found why I wasn't happy. And from that day that I found that to today and what will be going forward, I wake up every day and can't wait to do what I'm doing, because there's more challenges. There's more stuff to always be doing. I could be the most creative person and have full control that I want to be, and nothing's limiting me except myself.
That's fantastic. I find that inspiring, incredibly inspiring. That's awesome. And so I would dovetail my next question off of that, which is, what is success to you? Apart from financial metrics off the table, but like, what is success for you?
It's feeling fueled and happy. I mean, it really comes down to that. And that means happy when you're with your family, happy that you're waking up in the morning, you're looking forward to doing something. That to me is success. It is like the going after this thing in this very, very competitive industry against these huge companies. I just feel like this spite that like drives me. And like when we have wins, I just get so thrilled. And when we have challenges, I equally get like, sometimes you have to laugh because they're so bad, and you just kind of get through them. And all of that combined is like it evokes such happiness, which then in turn I take to my home life, and I'm a lot better about that compared to how I was before. Now I hate even calling it work, because what I do is what I choose for like fun. Again, I'm going to be nerdy. My wife would be at home watching like news or like Bravo, and I'm sitting next to her coding. And one day she's like, "Why are you always working?" And I'm like, this is just what I do for fun. And like, it just so happens that it's like part of my career. What you're doing for fun is you're watching this screen, I'm watching this screen, but I'm making something and creating something that wasn't there before. And I think if you can find that, then it's so different. There's not even a question of like what success is, because you're kind of living it. Now that said, like every day is not perfect. There's many days where I just want to like go in a corner and like go to sleep, because I'm like, why did I do this? I could have had it so much easier. And then you kind of get through that, and you're like, okay, I know this is the feeling I'm going to have it. In fact, I was thinking that yesterday. I was like having this gut feeling, because it's a very capital intensive business. And I was like, okay, this is how it feels, and I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to take action. And it's the best thing you could do is like, when you start to feel that way, is like you take some sort of action. I don't care what it is. And that's why I heard of like, there's some very famous activist investors, and this one like is a billionaire, and he kind of like lost billions in the market. His wife divorced him, and he just said, I woke up and started to make progress. And then the next day started to make more progress. And then all of a sudden he got out of it. Because what's the alternative? There isn't.
Right. I think that's a great answer. And I would love to know, as we kind of close out our time here, any other thoughts, anything that I didn't ask you that I should have, or anything that you would want to share about your journey, your story, what you're about, all the things, anything we didn't cover?
I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question. I would say that no matter where you're at in your life, if you're working for a corporation or you're working for yourself or you're thinking about something, you're dreaming about something, find that acceptable level of risk. This is the mission I'm on, to make sure people can identify what that is, and just start to play. Start to figure out, like, is this something that you think you could do and you could expand on? Even if it's a side hustle that makes you happy, and you're 9 to 5, you're dependent on it for your family. The only way you're going to figure out is if you want to get out of your career, or you want to change things, is by trying. So don't think that that is impossible, no matter where you're at. And that doesn't mean taking some crazy risk. Take that acceptable level of risk. And I think that can make the entire difference in your universe in a way that you may not even be able to comprehend today. And if you don't know and you're not passionate about anything, think about it as exploring Netflix or movies, right? Like I'm sure you're into movies or you're into music, like you have a taste of something. Well, how did you come to that? Well, you started to explore. You started to listen to different genres, and then you found yourself down a path, and all of a sudden that path led you to an artist, and then there was like similar artists, and then you found those. And that is not dissimilar to trying to find your passion if you're just lost. So like, find something that may be weird, but like, don't think about it in the sense of like, oh, this can never be anything. Like, just a quick side story. I was getting my teeth cleaned. I don't know why, like, dental hygienists like love to talk to me, and I can't talk back. Maybe that's why. But she was like talking. This dental hygienist was like talking so much, and I'm like, I just like listening, obviously, And my mouth's open, and she was telling me that during COVID, the dentist that she worked for and other dentists, they couldn't even get their tools sharpened. And she remembered that in dental school, she loved sharpening instruments. Like, right? Like, it's probably something I would probably fly by that part of that class and just be like, yeah, I learned how to do it and move on. Well, she really loved it. So she was like, oh, I think I could do that. So she took the dentist she was working at, took his instruments home, sharpened them all. 2 days later, he had brand new instruments that would have took like 6 months to ship out. It was like a big problem, I guess. So he reached out to one of his friends. She did it for another office. Fast forward, the manufacturer of these dental tools now hires her to sharpen all the instruments. She transformed her garage into this sharpening place. And now she was telling me she sharpens swords, sharpens everything. So if you need anything sharpened, I know the lady. But it's like, that is an example of something that you would never have been like, oh, I can make that into a career. But the reality is, she did. And she loves it. And she would much rather do that than clean teeth. So I would highly suggest that you look at that as an example of when you think maybe the thing you like it doesn't have potential to create a business.
It's a great example. It's when we sort of self-audit, we look back, what were the rabbit holes that we chose to go down where we were in flow, where we just got lost, but we're learning and really intrigued by something, right? That's a great story. I love that. Well, this has been fantastic. And speaking of stories, I'm so grateful that you shared yours with us. I think what you're doing is compelling. It is interesting. I think it is the wave of the future. Clearly, you are way ahead of the curve on this, and wishing you absolutely all the best. And just appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for having me.